This is a moment in African American history. In this season, called Is This High Cotton?, we examine if a people with no education, resources, or direction can actually accomplish anything valuable with their life. And if so, what kind of legacy will they leave? In today's episode, we look at a woman who started with nothing but the desire to accomplish something with her life. Now, her life was as dramatic as her work. High highs and low lows. We're talking about Josephine Baker. Listen.
In 1904, St. Louis hosted a World's Fair and an Olympic Games, but became far more famous for the St. Louis Blues, which was taking hold of the city with people like Scott Joplin playing in the Chestnut Valley area. Great stories start with great overture. Born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1906, her story does not read like a storybook. Her mother gave birth to her in a hospital alone. There was no father's name to put on the birth certificate. This would haunt her entire life. She grew up in the Chestnut Valley area, around brothels, rooming houses, and apartments with no indoor plumbing. Poorly educated and lacking skills, her family worked at manual jobs, like the laundry. At age 12, she dropped out of school. She began working full-time when she could get work. She married for the first time at age 13 and started performing as a street corner dancer in St. Louis.
I begged him for work. I said I never danced, but if I was allowed to, I would do my best. Mr. Russell had me stand on stage and observe. I was impatient to do the same as the girls. I wish I could have leapt to the beat of the music. It was a physical intoxication. Everyone was surprised to see how quickly I learned. That same night we left St. Louis. I was happy to travel and to work. I adored that life. I wished to work more. I was never tired.
She moved to New York City and began to audition for shows. In 1921, she joined the cast in the chorus line for Shuffle Along. She was part of the touring company until she became of age. Shuffle Along was an all-African-American hit show on Broadway. It starred actors Paul Robeson, Adelaide Hall, and Florence Mills. Baker was at the end of the chorus line and introduced a hint of comedy to make her performance stand out. She was the classical clown, hiding the anger that fueled her, turning that energy into a joy she shared with the audience, according to her son in her book, Josephine. Once she was old enough, Baker joined the cast on Broadway at 63rd Street Music Hall. The show ran until 1923.
All because I could cross my eyes.
She opened the Chocolate Dandies, a revue that ran from 1924 to 1925. She made $125 a week. In 1925, she packed up and moved to France because prejudice limited what she could accomplish in the United States.
As far back as I remember, I can only recall one single day of fear in my life. One day which lasted only 1 hour, maybe 1 minute. 1 minute when fear grasped my brain, my heart, my guts with such force that everything seemed to come apart. It was September 15th, 1925.
She set sail on the SS Berengaria in September of 1925.
The Statue of Liberty disappeared on the horizon. It was over between America and me. Goodbye.
Some have called her the first Beyoncé, and that she starred in theater and movies all around the world. She had a bigger impact than just entertaining audiences. At the age of 19, she opened in a revue where she was practically nude on stage, where she became very successful. She performed the Danse Sauvage, wearing the banana skirt. She is the first African-American woman to start in a silent film, Siren of the Tropics, in 1927. By 1929, she continued to perform across Europe, releasing songs and star in more movies. She was not able to find this kind of success in the United States, but not because she didn't try. In 1936, she returned to the United States to star in the Ziegfeld Follies on Broadway. She co-starred with Fanny Brice and Bob Hope.
In New York, where I'm going to star in the Ziegfeld Follies, they asked me to sing and dance on top of a skyscraper. I would love so much to be able to dance under the sky in the open air. It seems that all the kisses of the city are coming towards you.
It was rumored that Baker and Brice did not get along. With Brice getting great reviews for crossing her eyes and knocking her knees, Baker was panned for the same thing. The show failed and ended after 115 shows. Baker had awful reviews, with the Times accusing her of being ugly and untalented. Baker's performances were the product of producers who didn't know what their audiences wanted. She did cabarets on the side, which were pretty successful. She left the United States and did not look back.
America would not welcome home her own daughter.
She did not limit her life to just performance. During World War II, she became a spy for the French resistance and later received a medal for her work. She worked with the French counterintelligence in Paris. After the war, Baker was awarded the Resistance Medal, the Croix de Guerre, by the French military, and was named a Chevalier. In the 1950s, she became active in the civil rights movement, traveling throughout the southern part of the United States. In 1951, Baker did a tour after winning a battle over desegregating the club's audiences. She did not want to play to segregated audiences. That tour ended with a parade in Harlem and the NAACP honoring her with Women of the Year title.
My husband and I thank the American people through you for your magnificent reception here and for the opportunity to advance the cause of civil rights, which I know is important to you.
As the civil rights movement in the United States picked up momentum, Baker found a place in it. In 1963, she spoke at the March on Washington with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. She was the only female speaker.
You are here on the eve of a complete victory. You can't go wrong. The world is behind you. I've been following this movement for 30 years. Now that the fruit is ripe, I want to be here. You can't put liberty at the tip of the lips and expect people not to drink it. This is the happiest day of my life.
According to her son, Jean-Claude Baker, after Dr. King was assassinated, his widow asked Baker to help lead the movement. She declined. She said her children were too young. Baker married several more times, but was very intent on raising a family. She adopted 2 daughters and 11 sons. Baker's lifestyle was expensive and soon caught up with her. She was forced to leave the chateau, which had become famous as her home, because she could no longer afford it. She moved to Monaco, where others helped her and her children. In 1975, a show was put together celebrating her 50 years in show business. Her opening show had rave reviews with high seating demands. They even set up folding chairs. 4 days later, Baker was in a coma. She passed away April 12th.
Josephine Baker was said to have died of heart failure. How appropriate that a woman who lived life with all of her heart would go until it just stopped. She put her heart into her art, into her love of freedom, and into the love of children. Miss Baker started life without a father or a supportive family or an education. She left a legacy as a performer, a freedom fighter, and a humanitarian. This is a moment in African American history. You can't hold back a people determined to win. Thank you, and see you next time.